You don't belong here. Those were the first cold, dismissive words 17-year-old Jaden heard as he settled into his first-class seat. It was supposed to be one of the proudest days of his life. Dressed sharply in his school uniform, a white shirt crisply ironed, navy blazer, and a striped tie, Jaden had boarded this international flight alone. He wasn't just going on a vacation. He was headed to London to represent his school and his country at a prestigious global youth leadership conference. After months of late-night study sessions and hard-earned achievements, this moment was the reward. Jaden's heart was racing, but with excitement, not fear, until that voice shattered it all. "You don't belong here," the flight attendant said again, her voice louder this time, drawing attention from nearby passengers. Jaden looked up, startled. The woman standing before him was in her 40s, hair tightly pinned back, a stern look on her face. She wore the airline's polished navy uniform, complete with gold-trimmed epaulets on her shoulders, but her smile was anything but warm. "I need to see your boarding pass," she demanded. Confused but respectful, Jaden reached into his jacket pocket and handed it to her. She barely glanced at it. "You must be mistaken," she said with a smirk. "Economy is down that way." Her words hit harder than turbulence. Jaden's face flushed with confusion and embarrassment as a few passengers turned to look. The seat that had just felt like a reward now felt like a spotlight, and not the good kind. "But this is my seat," Jaden said quietly, trying not to draw more attention. The flight attendant leaned in, clearly not expecting to be challenged. "I see teenagers try this all the time. First class isn't a playground," she said condescendingly. That's when something changed in Jaden. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. Instead, he calmly reached into his bag and pulled out a sleek, embossed envelope, the kind reserved for top-tier airline clients. Inside it was a personalized letter from the airline itself, congratulating him on being selected as a Youth Global Ambassador and granting him full first-class privileges. The flight attendant's smile faltered for the first time. Still not convinced, she took the letter and walked off, likely to double-check with her supervisor. Jaden could hear faint whispers among passengers, some sympathetic, others curious. Little did she, or anyone else on that flight, know that this wasn't just about a seat upgrade. Because Jaden's father wasn't just a frequent flyer. He was David Cole, the CEO and founder of the very airline they were flying on. Jaden wasn't in first class by mistake. He was there because he had earned it, and because his father believed in giving his son the same high standards he gave every passenger. And what was about to happen next would make this flight unforgettable. As other passengers began settling into their seats, the senior seat, 1A, only grew more uncomfortable. The flight attendant, still standing stiffly in the aisle, had now raised her voice. "I don't care what you say. I've worked here long enough to know who belongs in first class." Her words echoed through the cabin like a crack of thunder. Heads turned. Some passengers frowned in confusion. Others simply watched with awkward curiosity. A few murmured to one another, unsure of what they were witnessing. A few rose back. Someone pulled out their phone, perhaps to text, perhaps to record. Jaden sat frozen, his hands folded in his lap, trying to stay calm. He wasn't used to scenes like this, especially not when he had done everything right. He had the ticket. He had the credentials. What more could she want? Still respectful, still trying to maintain his dignity. He repeated, "Ma'am, I'm in the right seat. You can check my ticket again." But it was like speaking to a wall. Before the flight attendant could respond, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" It came from the front of the cabin. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a sharp dark suit had stepped forward. He wore a lapel pin with the airline's logo, and the kind of calm authority that made everyone sit up straighter. He was Marcus Bell, head of in-flight security, responsible for handling conflicts before they got out of control. The flight attendant turned quickly, caught off guard. "Yes," she said, clearly irritated. "This young man is trying to sneak into first class. I've asked him several times to return to economy, but he's being uncooperative." The passengers waited, breath held. Jaden didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply reached over, picked up his boarding pass, and handed it to the man. Marcus glanced down at the ticket, then looked at the name, then back at Jaden. He looked up slowly, raising one eyebrow, not in suspicion, but in quiet realization. "Seat 1A," he said, his voice calm but clear. "That's correct. He's supposed to be here." Silence, an absolute, pin-drop silence, swept through the entire first-class cabin. The flight attendant blinked, visibly shaken. "What? That can't be right." Marcus handed her the boarding pass. "It's right here. You can see for yourself." She hesitated, scanning the ticket, her expression darkening with each second. Her confidence cracked, her assumptions unraveling. A woman across the aisle leaned closer to her husband and whispered, "She's going to regret this." Meanwhile, Jaden remained still, holding his composure like a seasoned diplomat. He didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. But behind his calm eyes, you could see it. The hurt, the embarrassment, the disappointment. He hadn't asked to be treated special. He only wanted to be treated fairly. But the irony, the real turbulence on this flight wasn't in the sky. It was in the judgment of the people on board. And they were about to learn just who Jaden really was. The flight attendant's face froze mid-sentence, as if time itself had stopped. In her hand was the boarding pass she had so confidently dismissed just moments ago. For the first time, she actually read it. Not just the seat number, not just the class. She read the name, Jaden Walker. And that's when it hit her. Her posture changed instantly. The sharpness in her shoulders softened. Her eyes widened. Her confident expression gave way to something else entirely, fear. Because that name, Walker, wasn't just familiar. It was iconic. Charles Walker, the billionaire founder and CEO of the airline she worked for. A man known around the world for building one of the most respected aviation companies from the ground up. A man admired not just for his wealth, but for his values, integrity, inclusion, respect. And Jaden was his only son. The flight attendant's hand trembled slightly as she held the boarding pass, her lips parting, but no words coming out. The color drained from her face, replaced by a pale, cold panic. I didn't realize," she finally stammered, eyes flickering between the ticket and the boy she had tried to remove from first class. But it was too late for excuses. Jaden, still seated, met her gaze with calm clarity. Not anger, not arrogance, just quiet truth. "You didn't ask." Those 3 words landed with more weight than any insult could have. It wasn't just about the seat anymore. It wasn't even about the airline. It was about something much bigger. What the flight attendant had seen was not a student, not a representative of the airline CEO, not a global youth ambassador heading to a prestigious conference. She saw a black teenager in a school uniform, and she assumed he didn't belong. What the other passengers had seen, now through a different lens, was a young man wrongly judged before he had the chance to speak, before he had the chance to prove he belonged, not just in the seat, but in any room he walked into. And what she had failed to see was the truth. Jaden hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't called attention to his name. He hadn't even mentioned who his father was. Why? Because he wanted to be respected for who he was, not for the name on his ticket. Around him, the cabin remained silent, but there was a noticeable shift in the air. Passengers exchanged looks, some sympathetic, others ashamed. The earlier whispers of doubt were gone, replaced by the sound of realization. As the flight attendant slowly stepped back, still holding the pass like it might burn her, Jaden turned his head and looked out the window. Not because he was ignoring her, but because he didn't need to say anything else. The truth had spoken for itself. And the lesson, it would be remembered long after the flight landed. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, the tension in the cabin hadn't disappeared. It had simply shifted. The confrontation may have ended, but the conversation had just begun. Whispers spread from first class all the way to the back rows of economy like wildfire. Flight attendants who hadn't witnessed the scene firsthand were now exchanging hushed words in the galley. Passengers craned their necks, glancing toward seat 1A with mixed expressions, some apologetic, others shocked. A few looked downright angry. The woman sitting across from Jaden leaned toward her husband and whispered, "She's going to be in real trouble." And she was right, because news of the incident had already reached the cockpit. The captain, an experienced pilot with over 2 decades in the skies, happened to know Charles Walker personally. They had flown together in the early days of the airline, back when it was just a regional carrier. So when he learned what had happened to Charles's son, he didn't wait. Before the plane even landed, he had filed a formal incident report. But what truly lit the spark wasn't the official report. It was a passenger's phone camera. Later that evening, after the plane had safely touched down, a short video began to circulate online. It captured the exact moment the flight attendant had accused Jaden of sneaking into first class, and the exact moment the head of security confirmed that Jaden was right where he belonged. It wasn't dramatic. There was no yelling, no pushing. But it was clear. It was real. And it struck a nerve. The clip hit social media platforms like lightning. Within hours, it went viral. Hundreds of thousands of views turned into millions. News sites picked it up. Commentators reacted. Activists weighed in. And the comment sections? They were flooded with outrage, support, and reflection. This is exactly what's wrong with the world. So much judgment based on nothing. She didn't see a passenger. She saw a stereotype. This young man showed more grace than most adults would. He earned that seat. And he earned our respect. People weren't just angry at what happened. They were inspired by how Jaden handled it, with calm, dignity, and restraint. He never said, "Do you know who my father is?" He didn't have to, because now the world knew who he was, and more importantly, what he stood for. As pressure mounted, the airline released an official statement from none other than Charles Walker himself. It read, "No passenger should ever be treated as less, regardless of age, race, or background. We will be conducting an internal review and taking immediate action to retrain our staff on bias, professionalism, and respect." The statement went viral, just like the video. But for many, it wasn't just about corporate policies or public apologies. It was about a moment, one that revealed how quickly people judge and how powerfully truth can set the record straight. And the story still wasn't over. The flight attendant was suspended, pending a full investigation by the airline. There was no press conference, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet, serious response from the company, and a wave of public attention that couldn't be ignored. But as important as the airline's actions were, the real impact wasn't just in policy. It was in perspective. Because what happened on that flight had already sparked a conversation much bigger than one incident, one employee, or even one company. And at the center of it all stood Jaden Walker. He didn't post the video. He didn't demand revenge. He didn't go online to shame or humiliate the woman who had wronged him. Instead, Jaden stayed true to who he was, calm, grounded, and wise beyond his years. Just a few days later, standing on stage at the Global Student Leadership Conference in London, Jaden chose to share his experience, but not to gain sympathy or stir anger. He spoke about something deeper: dignity, respect, grace under pressure. In front of hundreds of students from all over the world, he told the story, not of a viral moment, but of a teaching moment. Real change doesn't just happen through laws and policies, he said. It starts with how we treat each other every day in small moments, even at 35,000 feet. The audience sat in stunned silence. Then came the applause, long, loud, and heartfelt. Jaden's message wasn't just powerful because of what happened to him. It was powerful because of how he chose to respond. He had every reason to be angry. He had every right to call out injustice. But instead of using his father's name or his privilege as a weapon, he used the experience as a mirror for the world to take a good, honest look at itself. In the days that followed, Jaden's story was shared in schools, newsrooms, boardrooms, and family dinner tables. Teachers used it to discuss unconscious bias. Leaders used it to rethink training programs. Parents used it to talk to their children about kindness and courage. It wasn't just a flight, it had become a lesson. And for the flight attendant, whether or not she returned to work, one thing was certain: she would never forget that day. Not because she got caught, but because she got called in, not out, to do better. Jaden never spoke ill of her, but his actions said everything. And perhaps the greatest takeaway came in his final words on stage. The next time someone walks into a room or onto a plane, don't judge them by how they look or where you think they belong. Because who knows? The person you're looking down on might just be the one who signs your paycheck. A story that started with a snap judgment, ended with a standing ovation, and a message the world will remember.